Treasury, Professor Kganyago successfully steered several public finance and financial market reforms. Amongst others, the fundamental reform of the microstructure of domestic bond markets and reform in the management of the national debt portfolio. Since his appointment as the governor of the SARB, Professor Kganyago has made his mark, both domestically and internationally. As a highly regarded policymaker, during his tenure, Professor Kganyago successfully steered several public finance and financial markets. He has also led from the front, amongst others, the fundamental dependence of the microstructure in this bond markets, and has succeeded in managing of the national debt constitutional mandate of the SARB amendment. Since his appointment, during his governor of one of the most comprehensive changes has made financial sector regulatory and international is completed with the implementation of the policymaker. During his Professor Kganyago successfully extended several public finance and financial markets. One also led from the front, amongst others, the fundamental dependency of microstructure in this country of international monetary and succeeded in managing of the national constitutional mandate advisory body. Since his appointment, during his governor of one of the most deliberates Kganyago has made financial sector regulatory and international is completed. Professor Kganyago is a highly regarded policymaker, as a highly regarded the Association of Black Professor Kganyago successfully several public finance and financial 17 also led from the front. Sunday others, the fundamental dependency of microstructure in this country of international monetary and succeeded in managing of the national social mandate advisory team. Professor Kganyago deliberates Kganyago has made financial sector regulatory and international is complete. Professor Kganyago is a highly regarded policymaker and economic leader the Association of Black Professor Kganyago Kganyago has built a reputation, both in South Africa and financial sector regulatory stands out as Professor Kganyago is a highly regarded policymaker and economic leader the Association of Black Kganyago has built a reputation, both in South Africa and financial sector.
Thank you very much, Professor Swampi. I have seen Professor Stan du Plessis in the virtual audience, and Professor Jafta, thank you very much for the honor and the privilege of delivering this first lecture at the University of Stellenbosch. In case I had offended the other professors that I didn't mention, all professors observed. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a year of anniversaries for the South African Reserve Bank. The institution itself has reached 100 years. The rand has become a pensioner, and we are commemorating 25 years of central bank independence and also 21 years of inflation targeting. Inflation targeting is the youngest of these achievements.
I see that my own eyes every week as I drive through that.
Yeah.
So yes, but the encouraging news is that from the data we have, it is very.
Apologies, Governor. I think you're on mute.
I think what happened was that when we had that interruption, somebody muted all, including the speaker. But that is the wealth of virtual meetings. Turning 100 years is always a special anniversary. But for 73 of those years, the SARB was embedded in an undemocratic state. Similarly, good good job defending its value. Inflation has averaged 8% over the past 6 years and 9.4% before the introduction of inflation targeting, leading the currency to lose more of its buying power. Even central bank independence coincided with problematic policy choices in the early years before we adopted inflation targeting, as I will discuss later. By contrast, over 21 years of inflation targeting, we have largely succeeded in delivering our objective despite many challenges. Generally, and the households of all income levels in particular, as lenders require less compensation for inflation, interest rates have come down. Furthermore, with expectations anchored inside the inflation target range, businesses no longer raise prices as soon as the exchange rate weakens. This credibility has helped us cut interest rates to record lows during COVID-19 crisis. And we have been able to keep rates low during the recovery. This with inflation expectations, monetary policy stands out today as South Africa's main source of macroeconomic resilience. This is an area where we, as a country, have made careful policy choices and then stuck with them to our long-term benefit. As we confront our other economic challenges, such as our mass unemployment rate, persistent electricity shortages, record debt levels, and most recently, the wreckage of riots, we should reflect on our inflation targeting record and take inspiration from it. In my talk today, I will discuss reasons for this success before turning to the future of inflation targeting in South Africa. The first factor behind our inflation targeting success has been realism. Warren Buffett once commented that when a manager with a reputation for brilliance tackles a business with a reputation for bad economics, it is the reputation of the business that remains intact. Well, much the same is true for central banks. There are many things that people would like a central bank to do, but even a central bank will fail at an unrealistic task. Inflation targeting has asked a lot of the SARB and South Africans generally, but not more than any of us could deliver. For a start, inflation targeting is more flexible than critics claim. It doesn't require the central bank to cancel out every price shock using interest rates, or to have perfect forecast either. Shocks are inevitable, and so are forecast mistakes. Central banks need to do what central banks need to do is to convince people that they will do what it takes to steer inflation back to target over a realistic time frame. This is achievable and has repeatedly been achieved, with the key result that expectations South Africans hold of future inflation have consistently been falling. The same cannot be said of other objectives. In the 1970s and 1980s, many central banks tried targeting money supplies, but these turned out to be much less predictable than expected, and also less relevant for people's lives. No ordinary person cared about the growth rate of base money or M3, but they did care about inflation. Similarly, central banks have also tried targeting exchange rates, an objective that in many cases, including our own, has ended with billions of dollars thrown away for no tangible gain. We have avoided exchange rate adventurism through the inflation targeting era, a policy that has served us well. Unemployment is another area which could have turned good policy into bad. South Africa is a country where even in the middle of the greatest boom in a century, unemployment never fell below 20%. Looking at labor utilization, the share of working age people who have jobs, there is a huge gap between us and which can be explained by variables such as growth or interest rates. We have spatial patterns and trends in our landscapes that put large distances between jobs and workers. Our labor legislation protects insiders to the detriment of outsiders. Our education system absorbs a disproportionately large share of national resources, yet delivers some of the worst outcomes anywhere, including in much part. The chances of monetary policy overcoming all these structural constraints are slim to none. In this situation, an employment mandate for the SARB would have played out in one of two ways. It might have been a vague aspiration, adding nothing to our existing concern for the state of the real economy, or it would have been an excuse to make policy mistakes. The easiest way to destroy price stability in South Africa would be to insist on low interest rates because of unemployment. Our labor market is not dysfunctional. This excuse would rule out ever-raising rates, a policy that would leave us in the worst-case scenario of unemployment and high inflation. That excuse might have impressed people and won us sympathy, but it would have been profound. The SARB has not faced a tragic dilemma where there is no answer, and we must have either jobs or inflation. We have faced a necessary choice to do the good we can do, understanding the limits of our power. In making this choice, we have equipped ourselves to respond forcefully when there is a genuine cyclical downturn beyond the structural labor market problems that have long blighted this economy. The fact is, we have lost about 1.5 million jobs from the COVID-19 pandemic. And even though inflation is now back in the middle of our target range, we still have interest rates at record low rates already. So never let anyone tell you that the SARB only cares about inflation and ignores jobs. Bear in mind this power to put price stability first, which commit to an impossible mission. The second secret of the success of the inflation targeting is that it is simple. When we started debating it in the 1990s, some people complained it was too simple, a tactic approach on the grounds that lots of different things mattered and had to be taken into account. The problem was that this made policy complex and hard to understand, both for the public and for the policy makers themselves. So by adopting inflation targeting, we made a clean break from the era of opaque policy, and confusion. Of course, real-world problems are complicated and nuanced, but without clear objectives and techniques to resolve trade-offs, policymakers easily get lost. The sad truth is, if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. As I have learned from my years in policy making, while many people like to indulge in complexity, favoring obscure jargon, dense documentation, and complicated plans, the smartest actors prize simplicity and clarity. It helped give us strategic focus. The third and crucial factor behind our inflation targeting success has been accountability. Our goal is clear and public, and the evidence for evaluating our performance has been readily available in the form of inflation data independently produced by Statistics South Africa. Objectively, targeted inflation has averaged 5.8% since 2000, which is within the 3 to 6% target range. It has been 4.5% in the budget. Of course, it is to assess monetary policy properly, but we have not been short of scrutiny from markets, academics, analysts, international institutions, civil society, and others. Consistent with inflation targeting practice and with our democratic dispensation, we have also been highly transparent, publishing our data and regularly encouraging stakeholders to explain our thinking and answer critics. We certainly haven't won everyone over, but on the whole, the expert verdict is that we have implemented the framework effectively. We can feel secure in that judgment because we have robust accountability procedures. To some extent, the SARB success with inflation targeting also comes down to a fourth factor, which is good luck. Well, as one of South Africa's sportsmen once said, the harder you practice, the more successful you become. But unlike some other policy tasks, such as education, monetary policy can be delivered from a single head of office. Furthermore, thanks to factors such as our constitutional independence, we have been able to avoid state capture, unlike many other organs of government. This means we have stayed focused on serving the public instead of diverting resources to patronage networks. We must also acknowledge a helpful global environment. In pursuing low inflation, we have been able to draw a wealth of global knowledge. We have benefited from disinflationary forces, including globalization. We rates